The following discussion contains major spoilers for Valkyria Chronicles and minor spoilers for Valkyria Chronicles 2. Hey guys! As much as I hate doing another episode of Valkyria Chronicles right after the previous one, it is kind of what I'm playing right now, so what am I supposed to do? Not talk about the things that are on my mind? Because that's not the point of this show at all. So, in Valkyria Chronicles 2, I'm playing it, I got partway through the game, and a character ended up dying. I'm not going to talk about specifically which character ended up dying, because I just said this was minor spoilers for 2, and telling specifically which character died would make that major. But the thing that happened when I was playing it, and when that character died, I was kind of struck by how little the character's death impacted me. And I got thinking, why is that? Why was I able to just so sort of like analytically look back and examine the scene instead of being emotionally moved by a character's death? Possibly it's just that I'm jaded. You know, maybe I've just played so many RPGs over so many years that certain inalienable events that occur are things that I can't control, and so I don't let them touch me. It is certainly true that the more of an expert you are at something, the less you are surprised by anything that something is able to do. But even still, when I go back and I look at the scenes that really, really moved me, because there are about 3 scenes of character death that really, really touched me. I don't think that's the entire truth. I do think there are definitely really, really good things that some developers do that cause their death scenes to be a lot more impactful, while a number of other developers don't do those things, and so their scenes are less impactful. So, we're going to be talking about Valkyria Chronicles, and we're going to talk about Isara's death. If anyone just got spoiled by that, dude, I warned you. I warned you, like, almost 2 minutes ago. So, in the interest of anyone that hasn't played Valkyria Chronicles but is watching this anyway, Isara is the main character's sister and the Edelweiss's pilot throughout the first part of the campaign. She's also a Darkson, which, since Valkyria Chronicles is based on World War II, is effectively a Jew in the European population. The populace as a whole, including members of Squad 7, which the player controls, blame the Darkson for all of the world's problems, and more or less turn a blind eye to the violence that's directed at them. As the game progresses, Rosie, who's the most outspoken of the anti-Darksons, slowly finds her ability to hate and despise them melting away as she spends more and more time in close proximity with them, as well as seeing firsthand all the atrocities that she had basically ignored for her entire life. At the end of the Chapter 11 mission, we get a scene where Rosie does her best to try and start to, bridge that gap and try and make amends with Isara, while, of course, still refusing to admit she was ever actually wrong. Abruptly, an enemy soldier shows up and shoots Isara in the back. This scene is impactful for 2 primary reasons. The first is just how unexpected it is and how much it catches us by surprise. The shooting happened after a very, very tense combat operation where, up until now, players had always been safe. It had also taken place in the middle of an important character development scene for Rosie, and so the game really led you as a player to expect an entirely different scene than what it ended up delivering. But that's what's obvious. Let's dig a little bit deeper. First, let's look at the violence within cutscenes in general. Overall, when you look at the entire game, violence within cutscenes is fairly abnormal, and violence against Squad 7 itself is unheard of. Whenever there is an attack shown in a cutscene, it's against a town, or against a group of NPCs. What few times the game shows a battle that Squad 7 is actually participating in, it never specifically shows explosions around members of Squad 7, merely faces Gallian troops. This lulls the player into the expectation that cutscenes are inherently safe. If there's ever any actual violence against the party members, it's going to be in an actual mission, where you can affect it and control it. Then look at Isara herself, because look at the decision to have her be the one that got shot. Other than the very, very first scene of the game, some 20 hours before the current scene, Isara is never directly threatened by Imperial forces. Every single combat mission shows Isara within the Edelweiss, and if by some chance the Edelweiss actually is destroyed, the mission immediately fails. The player very naturally will conclude that Isara can never actually die, because if she ever did die, the mission would repeat. And so, to that extent, the player's gone through the game. You may have expected someone to die, but you would have never thought it might be Isara. Isara is sort of immune in your mind. Secondly, aside from how much work Sega put into making Isara's death be completely unexpected, the death is also particularly impactful due to its context within the larger story of the game. Isara's death plays in the overall narrative of the senseless cost of prejudice. Notice how the scene's framed. The Imperial sniper doesn't yell a racial epithet as he shoots Isara, and no attention is paid to him. The rest of Squad 7 returns fire, and apparently the Imperials run away and are never hunted down. Getting back at the sniper or getting revenge on the Empire is not the idea, is not what's important. What's important is the scene's impact on Rosie and the rest of the squad. The scene is about the tragedy of Isara dying at exactly the moment Rosie first began to see what a beautiful person she actually was, right as she lost the chance to know her forever. This feels really, really callous to say, but it's not usually enough to make an interesting character and then have them die. If a game designer wants a character's death to really have impact, they really need to tie it to the overarching theme of the game. Why? Well, video games by their very nature are interactive. The entire point of a game is to be able to affect the game state in some meaningful way. If we have a story moment which the player is completely powerless to change, the player's natural response is going to be to distance themselves from that moment. So, if you want that moment to stick with them, and that moment to really resonate with them, the character death has to tie into the game's ongoing and overarching plot. It can't merely be, if you use a death just to say, oh, the enemy killed this death, hate this enemy, yeah, I mean, we've seen that 1,000 times, and it's not going to affect us. We've played tons of games, and we've seen dozens of characters die. In some cases, we've seen hundreds of characters die. Game designers really can't shock us with death by itself anymore. So, they've really got to take a lot of care in crafting a character's death that really is meant to be memorable, if that's their goal. It can't just be an event that happens within the plot line, but a symbol of the plot overall. If we look at Valkyria Chronicles, and we want to summarize, what is beautiful about that game, almost all of it ties back to Isara. And that's the sign that a death was handled extremely, extremely well.